We're live. Want to stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic.
As a way of respecting, honoring, and creating awareness of our past, we begin our village board meetings by acknowledging that New Paltz is on the ancestral land of the Munsee, Esopus, and Lenape people. And please check out our agendas and our minutes and help us add to our list of ways to support Indigenous communities. Reach out.
Let me see if there's anything that we need to add to the consent or business agenda. Looks like there was nothing added since you posted it, so we're gonna stick with the version we have here. And while we're at it, I'm going to ask that we move the consent agenda. All in favor? Or how do you want me to say that, Donna? Forget it.
Ooh, so excited.
Okay, administrative business announcements. We have a public hearing is it still open? The public hearing for 64 Plains Road, or is it about to be open? So this project will be before the planning board. It's related to a subdivision, and at the next planning board meeting, the public hearing will be open. And Christmas tree pickup details. What date is that?
It's this Friday.
Ends this Friday, so leave your Christmas tree out on the curb, or you could drop it off at DPW garage.
It's preferred, but yes. And mulch is available.
And we heard from our county legislator, Eve Walter.
Scheduling conflict tonight, and expects to return again in February.
Yeah, I saw that note where she said she did not have a January meeting, so even though she has a conflict, she did not have an update to share either, and she didn't expect to have one.
They had
On the
just their
25th.
reorganization meeting, so they're working. I was trying to get it. Sorry. And I have some announcements.
Take it away.
So I just got confirmation from our friends, the attorneys over at Legal Services of the Hudson Valley. So for this workshop, so please save the date for a Tenants' Rights 101 workshop to be held on February 28th at 7:30 p.m. someplace on campus. The room is to be determined. I have to circle back with Eric from NYPIRG sometime next week, and we'll get that squared away. So our co-host will be our Landlord Tenant Relations Council and the college's chapter of NYPIRG, or New York Public Interest Research Group, Student Government, and Legal Services of the Hudson Valley. And it will be open to all to learn more about, tenants' rights. Thank you for putting that together. Yeah, I'm excited. It's one of my favorite things. So yeah, keep an eye out for flyers and stuff coming as soon as we have a room. The Never Use Alone hotline remains 1-800-484-3731. And Narcan trainings remain always available online at opioidpreventionnp.org. And you can get Narcan and other harm reduction services delivered to you if you call or text. I have two numbers actually now, 914-610-5324. The other is 845-842-1017. I don't know if anyone's checked out the free food fridge. It has a little makeover on the outside, looks nice and rainbowy. So the free food fridge outside here at 25 Prodigal Avenue remains open for all 7 days a week, 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. For more information on guidelines for donations, head over to millionsofbutterflies.org/free-food-fridge. And if you're hungry, head over there and get yourself something to eat. A bunch of us have attended all these swearing in the past 2 weeks. It's been a busy 2 weeks. I think it was a great way to kick off 2023. On New Year's Day itself, Mayor Tim and I went up to Albany and got to see our first elected woman governor get sworn into office. And that was really, I think, a really good way to set the tone. So just wanted to give a shout out to all of our women leaders. We have Governor Hochul. We have our first elected woman county exec, Jen Metzger. We were at her swearing in together. State Assembly member Sarah Hannah Shrestha was sworn in as well. And State Senator Michelle Kinsey got sworn into her second term. So all these women leading. Those are my announcements.
I have one. I went to Family of New Paltz today, and I just wanted to share my thanks for the folks who work over there in supplying such a needed resource. And just to remind the community that all donations are welcome there, especially financial donations. Even if you've just got like $20 to spare and to drop it off over there during open hours, it really helps them be able to supply the needed things that the individuals and families are asking for at family. So it was just really great to talk to Selma today at family. She does amazing work, and she's just always thinking about what other things we can do for the community. And one of the things she's working on is finding a location for a heating and cooling center in New Paltz. And what she learned is, and I might say this incorrectly, so forgive me, but it's the Catholic Charities. They run the one in Kingston and one in Ellenville, and they are looking for a location in New Paltz. And Selma is got her brain going on it. And so, yeah, if anybody has any ideas, or just start speaking to folks. There's a church that she was going to be speaking with, and a building behind another building, and I just don't want to. I can't remember exactly where they were, but also to have not just a heating and cooling center, but a shower for folks who are displaced, to have something like that to help them out. So just a reminder, of how much Family of New Paltz does for our community, and they're always looking for various types of donations, and financial donations are extremely helpful.
That was my first thought.
She has, I'm not going to comment on it because I can't remember exactly what she said. We were talking about so many things. But she has reached out to quite a few churches to make something permanent and acceptable.
Are you sure it was
No.
That's it. As far as announcements from the village board. They probably have the water turned off in the winter.
Yeah, probably.
Any public comment generally?
Of the
Okay, so that public hearing remains open. We opened it at our last meeting. We have 2 letters of support.
More. Do you have it? Yeah.
And this is related to the grant application to Empire State Development, because we're seeking funds for the Ann Oliver House restoration, which will become the future home of the Margaret Wade Lewis Black History Cultural Center. I motion that we close that public hearing. All in favor? I move that we open the public hearing for the law to provide a partial tax exemption upon real property based on the owner's volunteer membership in the New Paltz Fire Department for the New Paltz Rescue Squad pursuant to the tax change that the governor signed into law in December. All in favor? Any public comment? A motion that we close this public hearing? I move that we close this public hearing. Second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We already moved the consent agenda. Is Jeff Demansky here with us? So we'll start with Jeff, and this is part of business agenda item 1, climate equity and social justice.
Hello. Thank you again for having me here tonight. Should I jump right in?
Please do.
All right, thank you so much. So I am here. I'm Jeff Demansky. I'm the executive director of a nonprofit that's been in New York State for more than 25 years. I've been executive director for over 4 years. It's called the Center for Economic and Environmental Partnership. And I am a partner to the administrator that the Village of New Paltz selected to explore in the past and then launch in the past a community choice aggregation program, or a CCA program. I'm going to tonight talk about the history briefly about where we were, as I did with your kind invitation back on December 21st. I'll share the story that we talked about that night and gladly answer questions. But I'll talk about the where we were and where we are in the exploration and where things might go in the near future. Noting some of the interesting developments that happened with the program, particularly over the last year, with a couple of external players that led to some challenges and interesting discussion. But I'll tell the story to draw some clarification of what is real and what is just confounded with our program. But I will say too that while I'll keep my comments brief in this story about where we're at, this is just one of a number of outreach efforts that's happening in the partner communities to the Village of New Paltz. Tomorrow night, I will be at the town court in person, and I'll give a longer presentation, kind of an official walkthrough of CCA, and tell this story and answer questions. I'll be back there again, I think on the 26th of January. And we also have a virtual meeting on the 21st, Saturday, the 21st at 1 p.m. There's a Zoom meeting. And that is included in the flyer that the village has shared out with, and again, I thank you for that. So the information about that, that virtual Zoom meeting, which will be live on Saturday, the 21st. So lots of opportunities, including in surrounding communities, to learn about CCA and where things might go in the near future. So reflecting back, since early 2020, the village and town of New Paltz both joined a number of other communities that had launched in 2019 a community choice aggregation program. And in brief, a community choice aggregation program is a state-enabled program whereby cities and towns and villages can act on behalf of their community members to analyze what's out in the energy marketplace with our focus for electricity supply, to, in essence, create a buying club on behalf of their community members in order to optimize the opportunities that are out there and to help them avoid some of the challenges that are out there, including the bad actors that are out there. There's this idea of optimizing the cost benefit of the program is one of the wins that's offered through the program. Another is this idea that through this buying club, similar to Costco or BJ's Wholesale, where members benefit by the bulk purchase of the item, in this case, we're talking about electricity supply, you can get very competitive rates that can beat what people would otherwise pay from the originally state established opt-out program, where Central Hudson, which is all of our delivery company and will always be our delivery company in this area, as far as we know. But they will also make that supply decision as a state established opt-out. they'll make that decision for customers who don't make the decision on their own as individual customers. So this program, the Community Choice Aggregation Program that New Paltz had in place starting in 2020 and ran through the middle of 2021, offered this vetted package of a win-win scenario where not only did we have a competitive rate as the new default option offered to every community member that wanted it, a number of community members received it and needed to opt out because of the structure of the program. It was basically replacing one opt-out with another. Our local decision opt-out versus the state established opt-out. And it was a very competitive rate. And the sourcing for that electricity was 100% New York-based renewable generation production in the state. Additionally, it was offered without any restriction, no contract. And so it was part of the package. A third win in the scenario is that people are protected from being in bad contracts and being exposed to strange fees or contract elements that could be problematic. An additional fourth element represented by my participation in the past in the program has been being a resource within the community to support the program, but in the bigger picture, offering a resource to answer questions for people about the energy marketplace generally, about the program, to assist them with the program, getting in or getting out, depending on their interests, which people can do at any point in time. So we had a contract, as I've mentioned a couple of times, for the Village of New Paltz that ran from the beginning of 2020 through the middle of 2021. And then nearly all of that first contract redid the process back in 2021. And through the process of CCA, we selected a new supplier, a company called Columbia Utilities, for a new fixed rate for 100% New York sourced renewable generation into a 3-year contract that began on July 1st of 2021 and was set to run through June of 2024. That time period was, and we still are in, but a very, very interesting time, interesting in sort of the challenging sense in the utility markets. We had the tail end of the pandemic, which had its economic impacts, and then we were returning from that. And then we had, during that time period of the new contract, soon after the start of the war in the Ukraine, which had impact on global energy markets, which have affected utility rates, made them go very high over where they had been on average. And one of the benefits of our program with this, when a fixed rate is an option for the program, is that everyone participating was shielded from the fluctuations of the utility selected rate. So in the first year of the program for New Paltz, it went very, very well for the village. The accounting of the benefits was that because of the electricity use, about 10 million kilowatt hours were diverted, not produced by fossil-based sources for the participants in the village of New Paltz, which was the equivalent of avoiding over 1,000 metric tons of greenhouse gas equivalent. So a very significant environmental benefit just in that first year of the program. And because of the difference in what people would have paid versus what they did pay with our fixed rate, collectively, the participants in the village of New Paltz saved a significant amount, an unusual amount, but it was about $300,000 collectively, or on average $300 to $400 per household. So that's very extreme numbers, but it does speak to the potential benefit of the program. But again, there are those other elements of why this program is enabled by the state and why our communities are doing this program. It is this idea that as we transition from the old, inefficient, and vulnerable grid that we have towards a new grid, the state has structured policies and programs, and this is the most significant current example that people can participate in with the guidance of their leadership to deliver this win-win-win scenario. And counter to what people have expected, it's a way that people can support renewable generation without it being something that is necessarily more expensive. It's certainly the case that in a private decision that people would make for an electricity supply contract. There's a number of companies out there, some probably very familiar, that offer contracts for people that they can enter into privately to support renewables. Those tend to be much more expensive, and our program rates in the rates that we've had in the program are much better, certainly, because of the essence of the bulk buying club aspect of it. Now, that's the good news of what happened, but because things were so challenging and it was a really unusual marketplace, concurrent with the challenge of the billing system changeover in Central Hudson by Central Hudson, which started right after the new 3-year contract had started, things got even more challenging for the supplier in the program. There was a challenge with the billing system that they blamed, but it's also, we think, not insignificant desire to take advantage of the power that they purchased for the program, that they ended up wanting to get out of the program, arguing at first that the Central Hudson billing challenges were interfering with their business operations, but this is largely proven to not be true. But they sought to exit from the program. The element of the program where you have an administrator that is your champion, that is your guide, is the consistent good news story for this program. It is within the structure of the program that a municipality works and has a administration team guiding them and acting on their behalf. And the administrator for the program has and continues to play that role for the communities. Assessing the marketplace, and in the case of this issue with Columbia Utilities, sought to prevent them from exiting the program and was successfully doing so. They received a court injunction with the support of the municipalities, the partner municipalities, to stop Columbia exiting. But despite a contract that tried to prevent them from leaving, they found a backdoor by defaulting on their state payments to the New York Independent System Operator. So they found a backdoor to break the contract, which is really unfortunate because of the continued benefit that the community members would have seen from the continuation of the program. But the end result was that after 1 year of the program, people had to return to the original default, which in the scheme of things and in comparison to a lot of bad experiences that people have had in private contracts in the energy marketplace, it was not the worst scenario because there was no strange penalties or additional charges that anyone had to incur because of that change, because of that company breaking their contract. It was not a good thing. We're very disappointed that it happened, but it does speak to the consistent benefit of a CCA program. There are protections built into it such that that was the worst outcome that happened. New Paltz is still in a partnership with the administrator, as is the town and a number of other communities in the Hudson Valley. And there was not an immediate replacement of a supplier for the contract that ended, for a couple of reasons. Because the administrator was focused on stopping the old contract from ending, and then because the energy marketplace was so high, it was not an opportune time to go out and look for a new rate for the program. But the administrator, Jewel, has continued to look for opportunities, and based on their continuing analysis of the marketplace, determined that this spring, after we get past this winter with price hikes that were predicted and we're seeing in terms of energy rates, that this spring is looking promising. So the intent at this point, and part of the reason we're doing this continuing outreach again in education, is to prepare for the possibility of relaunching the program with a new supplier and new program rates or rate options. And the timing for that would be an issuance of a request for proposals, likely in March, with the energy supply agreements delivered to the village for review, so that there's it's a significantly updated supply agreement, which would be signed if the village decides to proceed with the program. This is all very much an exploratory effort. But if there is decision that it makes sense to proceed and offer this rate to the community members, the village will have had the time to review the new supply agreement, which has numerous additional consumer protection elements baked into it to prevent anything happening in the past. And it would have the blanks ready to be filled in for the rate or rate options that the collective partnership of communities has decided to proceed with. And that would mean that would be about April that the program would, if there's a decision to move forward, the program would launch with the issuance of a letter paid for by the supplier, but on municipal letterhead to all eligible customers who are going to be included in the opt-out structure of the program, with a potential live program in early summer of this 2023. And so that is the story about where we were, where we are, and where we might be going. I'll stop there. And again, just repeat that please let folks know they can come see and hang out with me tomorrow night at the town court. And I'll do a full presentation and answer questions in person, but I'll definitely happy to stop now and take some questions.
Anyone have questions from the board?
I'm excited to hear that hopefully by the summer, so that's great to hear.
Yeah, definitely like love how you're, emphasizing the point of one of the pros of, being a part of this program is having, some of those protections built in an especially chaotic energy climate. Because, in my day job, I definitely saw a lot of folks like in non-CCA communities were dealing with way worse billing scenarios than we were here in New Paltz. So I would definitely keep underlining that because we're all on board with the saving the planet aspect of it, but like with the having some consistency, I think we really saw that play out a bit.
Absolutely. It's been horrendous for so many people.
Oh my God.
Jeff, I have a related but slightly unrelated question, and I'm imagining that you would help shed light on this. So there are only a handful of CCA administrators approved to function in New York State, and they were approved by the Public Service Commission?
Correct. They had to file implementation plans to comply with the CCA order, and that's the pathway to be approved.
So what are there 3 admins in the state? And Jewel is one?
I think we're up to 5. It used to be 4
Okay.
for a long time, and there's more on the way. This is what the state wants. They want more administrators coming along. Yeah, so Jewel is one of 5 currently, and there are others that are in the process of being approved.
So, and I love the analogy that you use. It's a bulk buying club for electricity generation. So as an approved CCA administrator, could you help us buy any other items in bulk?
The CCA order does allow gas purchase as well. And
Gas,
so that is
like
something
propane,
that
like natural gas?
natural gas, yeah, not propane, but natural gas, utility delivered, under a utility structure. Yeah.
But nothing else, unless it's, as you're describing, natural gas or electric generation. Like you wouldn't be able to help us buy, I don't know, like office chairs in bulk. Get us a good price
I
on-
doubt that'd be something that the current administrator would do, but the natural gas and electricity are the main components of the CCA order. But there's been example, kind of more in the realm of a focus on environmental approaches, where Westchester Power, now Sustainable Westchester, is the administrator that's focused on CCA operations in Westchester. They've used it for a number of other aspects, well, 2 at least. They've used it, as we've discussed in the past, and something that's still, we're waiting for state final edict on the structure of how this will be, but for community solar access, community solar subscriptions, which can be offered on an opt-out bulk basis without contract for anybody, and through the utility bill, which is something that Jewel is very interested in, and others are as well. Additionally, they created a buying club benefit in Westchester for access to electric vehicles. And I think there was discussion of electric vehicle infrastructure, charging stations or chargers for home use. So it is, you're basically creating a virtual commercial entity out of a number of residential and small commercial customers. So there is, I'm sure, a number of creative ways that it could be utilized. It already, that's a couple of examples, but there's probably more
Right.
that could be done.
So yeah, because that's why I was asking this question, because I've heard this conversation for several years now. So the examples you're citing in terms of other items, it could include something like the seller of hardware that one would use for EV charging at home. That's an example.
Yeah, I believe so. And I know that was explored. I don't know if they finally implemented it, but that was something that was part of the exploration in Westchester.
And then how would it work with like electric vehicles?
I believe they had an arrangement. Basically, it was almost like a club of special access with dealers in Westchester, where they were offered an additional discount because they, of anyone who was a CCA participant, a CCA member.
Got it. Okay, so like a discount at dealers that they had that had been identified. Okay. Yeah,
it's a really interesting aspect of what could be done. I mean, there's a number of us who are very interested in what could be done in terms of energy efficiency too. Like, serving as having an intermediary to facilitate wide scale implementation of other actions. As I just said, for example, like doing energy efficiency upgrades in buildings, which is something not yet done, but has been discussed. And I'm really excited by the prospect.
Yeah, I just remember first learning about this many years ago, even back when Jen Metzger was on the Rosendale Town Council, and she was involved in Citizens for Local Power. One of the items that was being discussed, or a concept, was identify energy efficient appliances and then have the buying club be able to offer discounts for those. So these are ideas that have been kicked around for some time, but we're still waiting for broader implementation.
It speaks to just a general good point to leave in people's minds too. I don't think I said the word tonight, though I'm pretty sure I said it on the 21st, but it's evolution. This program is wonderfully structured to evolve and to be used for multiple purposes.
Got it. All right, thanks. And thanks for the overview. Bill has some questions.
Hey, Jeffrey, thanks. You mentioned some protections, additional consumer protections. Can you briefly tell us what those might be?
Oh, you tailed off on the end, Bill. I heard you're asking about consumer protections.
Yeah,
Is there more detail?
You mentioned additional consumer protections. Can you give us a brief what those additional protections will be or could be?
Yeah, there's a number of different ways I would talk about elements of consumer protection. On the one that I mentioned, I think most prominently, was that this benefit, this access to this rate, or potentially to community solar access, still waiting on the state for that, but is offered without any restriction, to consumers. So there's no way they can get in trouble with a contract, because there is no contract for them. The municipality, the energy supply agreement that I mentioned, the municipality enters into the contract on their behalf. So it truly is structured like a public benefit, like a public swimming pool membership that you give people, and they have to say if they don't want it, but if they change their mind, they want it back, they can get it. But additionally, this is sort of I've used the term that this is a gift. It's a time saving and a brain space saving program, in that there's a lot to look at. There's a lot of options out there. As an individual utility customer, you can go to you can find it through the Central Hudson website, or directly you can go to the Department of Public Service Power to Choose site to look at the options that are out there for a private contract. And when you do that, if you enter your zip code, you get dozens and dozens of options with different rates, different time periods, different sourcing, variable and fixed rates. So different types of structures that is pretty mind numbing. And it can be a great thing to do. Like, I guess in a day trader sense, somebody could do better than our program, than the bulk buying club, if they're doing short-term contracts and looking for opportunities. But this program is an optimization against that. They look at what's out there, and there's more leverage. You know, as an individual customer, you have no leverage in contract components or the rates. So there's a consumer protection element based in that idea that it's vetted and optimized and offered in a truly unrestricted way. So those are the few aspects I think that are most prominent. And again, there, you know, to emphasize the role that I have played and love to play is that, you know, there's an education resource associated with the program throughout the life of it. So not just about the program, but, you know, when the significant challenges were happening with Central Hudson, we were a resource to help people understand what was happening and some options they had for navigating through that. When they were often really having trouble getting through to anyone at Central Hudson, we were there answering phone calls, you know, really literally thousands of phone calls.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Any other questions for Jeff before we say,
I see
Good night,
Janelle has her
Mr.
hand up.
oh, Janelle's live?
Yes, Janelle Piotr here, New Paltz Climate Smart Coordinator, but really just wanted to express gratitude that this process is ongoing and that there is this exploration of trying to find a new energy provider. I often hear people reference, oh, the CCA died. And I try to gently correct them that the CCA didn't die, but rather just lost its energy provider. So we've tried to educate people, just as you have, Jeff, just now, to tell people that they can choose their own ESCO in the meantime. And I have done that myself. One question that I had, though, Jeff, is just that as we move forward and when hopefully we do have a new energy supplier and can go back to being part of the CCA, in my experience, it took a long time to get that transfer to happen, for it to end on one end and restart with the CCA. Is there anything that can be done to make that more seamless?
Which time period were we talking about, Janelle? That seemed to take a long time.
At the beginning, like I was already, our household had an ESCO and we, did not opt out. We quit our other, exited the contract of our previous ESCO. And it took, I think, advocacy from you to make it finally loop over. It wasn't, and I had talked to a number of other people where that was a challenge. And
yeah, and it's typically the in or out process is typically, the worst case scenario we say is it can be 2 months. It's only supposed to take 2 billing cycles at worst. Typically it takes place on 1 billing cycle, after when somebody makes a request to be into the program or to get out of the program. And I'm wondering, I'm suspecting that this was before the really challenging times. It got very bad. There was a real impact on our program in terms of Central Hudson processing those opt-ins and opt-outs after September 2021, when they implemented their program. But are you talking about a time period before that was it? I remember we talked a lot. It's early 2020. Yeah, it should have only taken 2020, but it's given what happened in September. I suspect I have to revisit our conversation, but it probably had much more to do with the challenge of actually the communication between the supplier and Central Hudson than anything else. Which the good news too that's worth sharing here is that if people don't know, there's amazing amount of scrutiny on Central Hudson right now, and a Public Service Commission report that came out that stated that there was no association, no cause by the CCA with what happened at Central Hudson, though there was some statements made by that company to the counter of that. And hopefully, the reason I say this is hopefully after all this scrutiny, I'm hoping they run much, much better. And so that kind of base challenge won't happen for people who want to opt in or opt out.
Great. Well, that just reinforces in my mind even more that, people should feel free to go ahead and pick another ESCO at this time until the CCA has a new electricity supplier, because, in my mind, it's all about, having a green energy source. So as long as we, that's the beauty of the CCA, is being able to opt in and opt out. So gratitude to all the work that all of you are doing. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And just one to build off that point. we offered a lot of advice for people in vetting contracts too, you know, from the helpline for the program, including the one piece of advice I'd give now is definitely consider getting into an ESCO to support renewables and at a good rate if you can find it. Just make sure it's one of the elements that is available to look for, just if there's not a restriction, to make sure you can opt out without penalty of that private contract. So that if you want to join a CCA, or just generally, if you want to get out of it, look for a company that doesn't have a penalty to get out of a contract.
Thanks, Jeff. Any other
All right.
questions from the board or anyone?
That's it for now. Thank you.
Okay,
right,
moving on to our next.
Thank you all again.
business-
Thank you.
Moving on to our next business agenda item. So we closed the public hearing on the local law to provide a partial tax exemption to our volunteers in the fire department and rescue squad. So this would work if a volunteer had been serving for more than 2 years, then they could receive, and the way we've written our law is that they could receive 10% off the assessed value when their property tax bill from the village of New Paltz is being calculated. Then there's some other interesting stipulations in our law. So if someone served for more than 20 years, they basically receive this tax exemption in perpetuity. And then if someone were to die in the line of service, they would receive the or their unmarried spouse would receive the tax exemption in perpetuity as long as that member had served for 5 years, and if they had been serving for 20 years, the unmarried spouse would also retain that benefit if the member died. So it's definitely a material benefit to our members. I think it sends the right message in terms of how we value our volunteer firefighters and rescue squad members. Before I move to adopt the law, I think we should also, as a board, consider recommending to the town of New Paltz, as well as Ulster County government and the school district, to adopt similar laws. So in the case of the county and the town, they would adopt similar laws. And in the case of the school district, the Board of Ed would move a resolution that would extend this benefit.
Can we send our law over when we're done, to all those entities with that note?
Yeah.
Please, thanks.
Yep, I think that's the way to do it.
Awesome.
So does someone want to second my movement? I was messing with you. Any further discussion?
This is just brilliant.
Important stuff. All right, and we thank Governor Hochul for signing this into law in December, and we saw that this happened, and we we made sure that we got this to be considered by our public and our board as soon as possible. So I move that we seconded it. All in favor? Aye. Oh, right. So we had a note from our attorneys. What was the language? I don't have it in front of me. Right. So let's bake in exactly what Autumn just described. It's a type 2 action, which no additional review is required for seeker and bills. So it's just 4 yeses and 1 abstention.
That's
Thank
awesome.
you to everybody who volunteered for the village and the town, and especially those who risked their lives. We're incredibly. have you all. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
Absolutely.
And thanks Tim and everyone else for moving so fast on this one. That was like
Lightning speed.
lightning speed as far as like action goes. Awesome.
Talked about
Forever, but like, yeah, that was big, great. Yay.
And I think what's important to note too is that we worked hard for several years trying to improve the reward program, the LoSAP program. You know, that had been limited to a $700 annual award for active members for many, many years. And we were pushing to triple it to 2,100. And eventually there was legislation in Albany that was carried that moved it to 1,200. I was actually talking with the fire chief today that was signed into law in 2019. It almost feels like it would be appropriate to start encouraging the legislators to consider upping that.
Yeah, I think that law.
Yep. We spent a lot of time trying to get that in the radar of the right people. Senator Metzger's office, or the senator, carried that law. So that has been memorialized and will be sent to the Department of State for approval. Next item, the Restore New York application. Do we need to do anything this evening about that? Because I think we take an action on Jan 25, a resolution, but we don't actually need to do anything this evening. Right, and the folks in Ulster County Economic Development Office have been helping to make sure that we have all of our I's dotted for this grant application. So we thank them. And that grant application deadline is the 27th of January. So, you know, Autumn's been working diligently on this application, and we feel like we have everything in order to submit a strong application for the Regional Economic Development Council folks to consider. And the next item is the Park Mobile contract. So I think the conversation that we had with our attorney yesterday is that we could ask the board to approve that contract pending final review from our attorney. So our attorney, Will Frank, has the contract. We discussed some of the issues that we had questions about. And this is, I feel, where Will really shines. I've seen this on numerous occasions where he's good at going into these convoluted contracts and identifying things that make the most amount of sense for our village, you know, even when they're big behemoth type national companies.
Autumn, TBC stands for,
To be confirmed, right? So it's basically put on the agenda as a placeholder. So that's what we're waiting for, is that final review from our attorney in this situation. But I'm comfortable moving to have this contract approved by our board pending final review and comments from our attorney. Someone want to second it? All in favor?
Aye.
I don't know that we have any new update regarding the discussion on new parking spaces. Did anyone?
we're waiting, we're not ready to discuss it.
Okay, so we can put that on a subsequent agenda.
Yeah.
And this is just kind of a point that we wanted to share, because our board received a letter addressing the property covenants for the pit property. So the developer who's interested in building a complex in the pit shared us some renderings and responses to the property covenants from the 1960s and subsequently. So we have that proposal, and they have asked to come and present to our full board at our next meeting on January 25th. The only thing that I would add is just that we have asked our building department to make sure that it's been reviewed by their office in terms of whether the project made sense from our existing zoning. So we'll hear from the developer on January 25th, and we'll get feedback from our building department official after they do their initial zoning review. I motion that we move bills and claims. All in favor? Any planning board liaison update?
First meeting of the year, both were Ulster County Planning Board and our own planning board meetings were brief. A couple of things were considered, a deck, some minor considerations. At the Ulster County Planning Board, the development at 137 North Chestnut was under review. They have not prepared the statement yet, their determinations, and expecting those fairly shortly. But there was nothing in the meeting that was discussed that was going to be onerous on the placed upon the developer. I did have a question about it being in the floodplain. Good section of that structure will be in the floodplain, and all that needs to be addressed by the developer. I want to congratulate our HBC and design folks who presented an award to Stewart's Shops for their partners in preservation for their gifting of the Ann Oliver House for the development of the Black Cultural Studies Center being headed by S.E. Lewis. That was a really great call on their part.
Any ZBA liaison update? And that's the same project that we announced earlier. There's going to be a planning board public hearing just to tie those two comments together. I don't think we have anything else this evening, correct?
I forgot to make.
Oh, actually, I do too. So do yours and then remind me to do mine.
Environmental Policy Board needs new members. So we're always talking about how we need volunteers. Just need to give EPD its due diligence. And so, yeah, you know the drill. Reach out to us if you have some time to get involved. There's all sorts of cool things EPD works on, you know, from keeping up with pollinator gardens out front of Village Hall to looking at you know, idling legislation is another fun ongoing project. So many different things. So come our way if you're interested. We totally need a couple more folks to fill some seats. And we meet second Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. And Climate Smart Task Force has changed its meeting dates for 2023. So that is on what was that, 2 nights ago? So that's second Tuesday, it was last night. But also now second Tuesday of the month at 7 p.m.
And while we're talking about it, the Zoning Board of Appeals still needs some members. The ZBA also meets on Tuesday. I believe it's it is also the second Tuesday at 7. Yeah, right, at 7 o'clock. And you know, you would be helping us to decide when anybody wants to do something that doesn't quite meet the code as far as the planning of things going forward with their properties. You would help decide whether it made sense for the community or not, you know, the risk that is there.
And what I wanted to add to this agenda, I think we should have added it earlier, but I'm doing it now. So I'd like to reimburse Perry Goldstein $300. This was the amount that was greater than his original estimate. So there was a pump that needed to be replaced at his house. And the original estimate, I think, was in the neighborhood of like $1,500 or $1,400, but the estimate came in $300 higher. So we signed it in these purchase orders to go ahead and send Mr. Goldshine the additional $300. Someone want a second? All in favor? Aye. Motion to adjourn.
Second, third, fourth.
Good night.